welcome to this next edition of the Value Exchange podcast. I'm Annabelle Lambert and I'm here with my regular co-host Robert Pye. Say hello, Rob Pye.
Hi everybody. Hi both of you.
We're here today with Mike Bond, who rather excitingly we've never met till at least about 10-15 minutes ago. But Mike is an agency founder, a studio director, a lecturer in design, creative thinking, and we came across each other because Mike is the founder of an educational inspirational tool called WonderWhat, which I'm hoping we'll talk a little bit about at some point in his story. But Mike, over to you. Please do tell us who you are, where you come from, what you do, anything you want to share.
Well, thank you for having me. Hello. Yes, I'm Mike Bond. And I guess most of the things in my life, and those things you just listed there, Annabelle, it's all around creativity, one way or another. And I guess I've always known that whatever I was going to do in life was always going to be something to do with creativity. I didn't perhaps understand that it'd be a job, but I knew it'd be something to do with creativity. And lo and behold, I have several hats in my life, and each one of those hats has got something to do with creativity.
So we have to. It's a big word, creativity, isn't it? Because I could claim to be creative as I would as a geek, but I'd like to create with. I'm a crap coder, by the way. I'm not very good at that, but so let's break down this. Where did it come from? This how would you? Let's go back to the as far back as you want to go.
Way back. I always remember my mum always would say that she could never keep me entertained. I'd be always looking for the next thing to do, and that soon became, I think, a desire to grab things, dismantle them, make, create, build. So I probably from the very, very earliest moment, it was about creating and entertaining myself, I suppose. But really, the seeds were really sown. I was taken to a Saturday morning art class in my local town, and it was hosted at the local college, where they would do the foundation courses and so on, A levels and all the rest of it. But on a Saturday, they would open up their doors to young people, and I went there when I was 5, and I went there with my sister and 2 friends, and we did pottery. And we did pottery every Saturday. And it was completely eye-opening that you start with the thumb pots and you explore clay, and then you start to make models and you fire them in the kiln, and there will be successes, there'd be failures. But it was just to come and luxuriate and immerse yourself in just the joy of making, I suppose. Now we went back every year. So I went from the age of 5 actually all the way till I was 15.
Wow.
And by that point, I was the only one in the 4 of us that was still going. But I was adamant that this was where I felt at home. Shy kid at school, didn't quite fit in. This is where I felt that I fitted in. And I'm absolutely certain that kind of journey of creativity, that addition of creativity in my life, which is thanks to my parents for opening that up to me, is what sparked everything. I'm absolutely sure.
So it really is. It's a powerful story, very powerful story. And I remember, in my experience as a dad, my youngest son, was into Minecraft, much older than 5. And it's interesting that you mentioned 5, because I just, and it's like, I was a child, I was restless, I was, wanting to explore. And it's like, yes, you were a child, probably like every other child. Yeah. And, when you think about children, that's kind of what they do. And then you had this outlet to explore. And I remember, probably I would score myself very harshly, negatively on this as a dad. My youngest son with Minecraft, and he's clearly creating virtually. And he, I wanted to get him into tools, but I wasn't able to take that into, because he wanted to build something that would go to Mars every time, and it was like, well, can't we start with just putting 2 pieces of wood together? And that was kind of never enough in terms of that maker context. And then I remember a relationship with a very famous maker lab entrepreneur. Maker labs are, if you've heard of the expression, it's just an open source
Yes.
gathering of people who would use common machinery and that to maybe build incredibly complex things. But he was all about, how do you give the kids the drills, the saws, just let them get on with it. And
Yeah.
that's something I think we should do. There should be more art clubs and courses for dads like me to know how to just not fail on that. That bit. Sorry to
Yeah,
it's
but
a powerful story.
it's so true. And I think being in that space where there are fewer rules perhaps than you're used to. It's just, here you go, create. I mean, there is a lesson going on. It's learning maybe a technique or a piece of machinery, but ultimately it's you're making something from here or from here, and you make it real, and it's in front of you, and you can point at it and you can say, I did that. It's such a powerful thing. And I think also the fact that this certainly for me was happening in an environment where I could see work of people who were maybe 18, 19, 20 around me. No one mentioned it. No one pointed at it. No one explained what it was or exactly the room I was in. But being surrounded by that aspirational, maybe one day you could do this too type work is another really, really powerful thing.
Yeah,
And very, very inspirational.
There's some research that's saying that kids are taking their role models from older kids, not old people anymore.
Absolutely.
So having those younger mentors that aspirationally can show the path is just like so important.
It's absolutely. And they don't even know their mentors. It just happens that their work is there in the room that you're creating your thumb pots in, and kind of a link between this and that is sort of almost opening up a path of aspiration without them even knowing.
I want to ask, do you still have any of your pots?
No. Somebody, I got quite good at making ducks. I think there's a duck in our loft somewhere.
Okay. The reason I asked is I was lucky enough to do a tiny bit. I'm not at all artistic or creative, really. I enjoy making stuff and doing things, but I did pottery when I was at school, and I have this pen holder. It is not sophisticated in any way, but my children know that on pain of death they should they should break it, because I've kept it with me forever. It's very useful, it's just a little pen pot, but it's just
I'm going to have to ask you to bring it over in a second, aren't we? Okay, so wind forward to whatever point in time you want, and that how did that then creativity manifest itself next in your story? What was the?
I guess I was pretty academic at school, if I can call it that. I did quite well. I knew how to pass exams. I did well in lessons. I was well behaved. But I think because of that position that I held in the class, as it were, I was veered away. They attempted to steer me away from art and creativity. Do something worthwhile, become a doctor, whatever, that kind of stuff. I know.
In our opinion.
And it just frustrated me so much, because even though I didn't quite know where this would all go, I didn't really know the world of design. I just knew that you could do creative things somehow. And I just had a sense that there's probably a wide variety of ways that you can apply this in your life, whether that's town planning, whether it was architecture, whether it was being an artist or making music. I had a sense, but even though I didn't know where I would go, this would open up things for me. And I was just adamant. I think also that you've got to do the thing that makes you happy, surely. Surely that's what you should do. So I did A-levels at school, but in my spare periods at school, I got on the bus and went to town and did an extra A-level at the college that I did my Saturday morning class in. So I continued my journey in that place, and I got my art A-level done in a year so that I could go back and concentrate on the other A levels, the proper ones I was doing at school. And interestingly, my just interest in education just started to go down. I mean, I still did okay, but that partly told me that I knew I had to do something creative because I'm not happy. I'm not happy when it's not there. So then I did art foundation at the local college. Well, one thing that the school did do really, really well was they took us on art trips. There were a couple of teachers that were like, okay, we need to take you to places and open your eyes. And I remember going to the National Gallery, obviously in Trafalgar Square in the middle of London. And I don't remember much about the gallery, but I do remember coming out of the National Gallery, the bit where you look over Trafalgar Square. It would, dusk was coming. London was alive, and I sat on those steps, and actually the hairs on my neck had just gone up. I sat on those steps and I looked over London and I went, I have to be here. Like, I just have to be.
I have to say, I had the very, very same experience, but with the National Theatre, because my English teacher used to take us to the National Theatre, and we'd go once a year. And this was, before the days it was, beautifully developed in the South Bank. It was full of, skateboarders, and it was pretty, cardboard city and pretty grim.
Yeah.
But it was just the whole experience of just like that inner city. Like I just that the same for me. I was going nowhere but London after we did that.
Absolutely,
Anyway.
absolutely. And coming from,
And the experience was so visceral that you can still actually
I still feel it
now today.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And looking back, I know that would have been about the pace, the energy, the variety of people, the culture that I just witnessed and been through and surrounded by, and it just drew me here. So then I applied to St. Martin's and came to study graphic design.
May I ask where you travel from? Like, where were you?
It was Chesterfield, is where I grew up.
Oh, right, okay.
So very near to Sheffield.
Yeah. What I forgot to say earlier on, pre-chat, was I'm from the Midlands. So I was born 2 miles from Alton Towers, so I know where Chesterfield is. With your crooked spire.
Yeah, not far from there. Yeah. So for me, it was like it was obvious I needed to go somewhere different and be immersed in creativity and culture. Like, probably I wasn't going to get where I was at that point in my life. And I guess I generally don't believe in luck in life, but if there is a moment of luck in my life, is that on the first day of my first year at St. Martin's, I sat next to somebody called Bond and Coyne, and we got talking, and we became friends, and we did joint projects together. We ended up doing a joint degree show together. We went to the Royal College of Art together. Then we went to the Helen Hamlin Centre for Inclusive Design together, and then we set up in business. And it was just that was a moment of serendipity that I sat next to him in the very first moment of my St. Martin's experience, and therein met my best friend and my business partner.
Wow.
And what was that sort of like? You've landed, because you kind of you didn't get a proper job. You didn't do a proper,
And this is not a proper job.
They're overrated proper jobs.
I'm repeating your words. Your words, not mine.
Okay,
No,
okay.
But so what was the? Did you feel, was the experience then like you've landed? This is wow. This is, I was meant to be here. There's was that fellow travellers that you met, not just your business partner, but what was the experience like?
Honestly, it's probably the foundation year before St. Martin's, actually, where I felt that I'd landed. You can go through school life, can't you? It's very regimented. You're ticking the boxes. You're doing all the right things. You're passing your exams, and you're craving art. I really wanted to find my tribe because I just didn't feel like I fitted in at all. And I went to Art Foundation in Chesterfield and suddenly realized what it's like to be with people who are like you, and the power of finding your tribe is quite a thing. And it's the first time I felt it in my life, and that's when I knew that I'd landed. So wherever I went next, I knew that it needed to be in a tribe like this, of people that believed in the power of creativity like I did, that were on a journey like I was, and that exploring together and discovering together, I suppose, was that moment for me. So I landed
Brilliant.
before I came
Yeah,
to London, actually.
yeah, brilliant. So, what was St Martin's like then? What was the experience?
I mean, it
What were
was
the
great being able
moments?
to go home and say that your college has been sung about in a song by
It's
Paul.
just going through my mind.
It was that year as well. It was the year that it came out.
1995? Was
Oh,
that
maybe it wasn't then. Oh, 96.
right?
96.
96. I
So
think they performed at Glastonbury in 95, and then they just rocketed, I think.
there you go. So
Is what I recall.
so I rode that wave of coolness, let's say. You never heard of St. Martin's? Yes, you have. It's in that song. All right, yeah, it must be cool. I guess I remember I used to write letters home. This was the age before email, wasn't it? And I was so excited by the number and variety of people that I'd met that I wrote letters back home to my family, listing out everybody that I'd met and the country they were from. I was just blown away that life could be like this in a way, that you
Wow.
can just suddenly be connected with the world and you haven't left the country. And I've still got the letters somewhere. And so being in St. Martin's was like stepping out into the world, I suppose. People from all over, all sorts of different backgrounds and interests, levels of confidence, specialisms, and the excitement of that again has never left me.
Yeah,
But I think what St. Martin's teaches you is you could call it bravado, you could call it arrogance, you could go it thinking outside of the box and all sorts of cliches, but it teaches you that there are no boundaries. And depending on how you take that can make you an arrogant designer, or it can just enable you to understand that you're in control of your creative destiny. And I think that's what both me and my business partner came out with.
wonderful. And here again we're circling to that notion that wherever your feet land, whatever that passion is, whatever the sort of problem you're solving with yourself, it's like,
Yeah,
because we're all ultimately doing that, aren't we? A bit
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
self-discovery. Then it's actually about people. Then the
Completely.
stories are actually about people and
Yeah,
the context of the people are everything. They're not just part of the play. They are the play. They're everything.
completely.
And it's just profound, and we could do well to just, well, that's why we're here, isn't it, to just
It is
remind us about
basically.
you.
Yeah.
So where where so you rattled off to St Martin's, and then
Yeah.
what sort of some major sort of Trafalgar Square moments that you could sort of recall that are probably repeatable to the general public, as
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
just as a your little bit of tempering there. So,
Yeah. Well,
No
I think.
boundaries. Yeah.
no boundaries other than common decency,
Okay.
which
Okay.
is
Might be tricky. No, I think really St. Martin's was about. It was about building confidence, about building the relationship that I had with Martin, my business partner, and understanding what would be possible together. And I think we realized very, very early on that we would do something together. Whether that would exactly be a business, I don't know whether we really truly knew that, but whatever it was, we knew we'd do something. So a lot of that time was just working that out. And I suppose that I didn't perhaps quite have a Trafalgar Square moment as such, but it's when you start to realize that people listen to your thinking and refer to you as a team and start to show that they believe that you have something to offer and what you're offering is good, then that's very, very motivating indeed. And I think that's the feeling that I got from St. Martin's, I suppose. I guess then
because that's quite
we
a unique happenstance, isn't it? That you're going through. You haven't sort of got that seed of the idea that then overtakes some, both of you as co-founders, that you're actually just aligned as human beings. You don't really know, but it's just we kind of thought that, didn't even know if it would be business, but there would be something, which I
Yeah,
think is quite an interesting break to the convention, and that's beautiful, isn't it? Because we don't want convention. We don't want
yeah,
this to be a sausage factory where we just like everybody has to be the same cookie cutter shape. So, like actually, no, I connected with someone and we had no idea, but we
yeah.
sort of kind of knew. That's a nice way around,
Exactly,
isn't it?
exactly. And I think that's partly a skills thing. That's partly a beliefs thing. It's partly a personality thing. Um, I guess you would say that I'm the more outgoing one of the two. I was also more interested in words. He was more interested in images. I was perhaps more emotional. He was a bit more logical. It just, all of these things started to click together where we would complement and balance out. So I'd be the one dragging us into the room where there was an opportunity, not quite sure what's going to happen. And then we turn around and Martin would drag me out and go like, okay, this is how we're going to make it happen. And, that we kind of learned that the differences are your strength, and we'd never had an issue where we would fight over doing the same thing. And I know that can be quite a common thing in the business, and we've never had it. And I suppose that's one of the benefits of having met right at the start of our higher education, is that we could work all of that stuff out. So by the time we were left, we were just doing what we'd always done, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a big subject, I guess, there in terms of stories in itself that we've never ever dug into. But if you look at Rob, Annabelle, Tony, three people that met 25 years ago, and we've worked together ever since. We are so totally different, in terms of, we've had some common places we've worked and that, but it is that difference is that, you kind of, that you'll be three points of a triangle, not even three edges of a triangle, in terms
Yeah.
of your perspective on absolutely everything. It's like,
Yeah, and what a joy it is to find that. And I feel so lucky that I found it, and I'm sure you feel lucky that you found it as well. But whilst I say that is like, you still have to have the awareness to spot that it's a thing, to value that as something, and to work on it. So the luck is you happen to walk past each other, or whatever, whatever brought you together. That was the luck. But actually, beyond that initial being put in the same space at the same time, none of it is luck. This is a lot of work, and you spotted its value and you made it work as well.
And there's a sort of a bit of a metaphor for, planetary harmony, isn't it? It's
Probably,
kind of
yeah.
spotting our differences and valuing them and making it work through hard work. Amen. Right, over. That's it then. Job done. Peace on earth. But no, back to Mike. I've got to just interrupt this bit for a random, bit of intermission. On your LinkedIn, it says Mike in brackets James Bond on your. Please tell me that your middle name is not really James.
It is James, yes.
Fantastic. James Bond. You've never heard that one before, have you? I've just thought you were.
You can imagine, whenever I check into a hotel or go through passport control, no one ever makes a 007 joke. But they all think that fair.
But it makes the joke no less original for the person who, on this end of the interview, who's laughing genuinely, because it is my first time. So there you go. I'm sorry, I was going to ask it. I felt moved to do so right now.
I mean, I could roll my eyes, couldn't I? But I decided to put that on my profile, so I think it's a good bit of personal branding, personally.
Well, that's memorable for sure. Well done.
I have a problem with names, but in your case, I don't, John.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's just conscious of time. We're now into business. Where was your first business with your partner? What was the first experiment, if you like, or endeavours into working together?
I suppose we worked together all the way through our study. But as we got towards the end of our MA at the Royal College of Art, my interest in education was coming more to the surface, and we were heading towards the MA degree shows, thinking about what we
Wait,
do next.
can I just
Yeah,
ask, when you say you worked together on the MA degree shows, were you a partnership in producing whatever you showed at that? Is that what you mean, or
that is
um,
what I mean. Yeah, not everything was joint, but
no?
much of it was joint. So we did a
Okay,
completely joint degree show at St
right, okay,
Martin's, and then actually we did separate shows at the RCA, but our work crossed over and we collaborated on a whole range of projects together.
okay. Sorry.
Um, but one of my own projects was looking, I was always interested in education, probably through my mum, because she'd done adult education for many years, and I suppose I was already starting to really understand the value of the experience that I'd had. Anyway, so a general interest in it, and I was also interested in the fact that teachers often had to create their own materials, right, for their students. Yet, as far as I was aware, they were not taught how to design. They weren't taught the basics of design in order to make communication as good as it could be. And for me, I didn't understand how that could be a thing. If there's a point in life where you want communication design to work really well, surely it's in the classroom. And whilst there's so much emphasis on teachers creating, we were just leaving them to sort of work it out. And I just thought that was really unfair. So I had these ideas about connecting design education with teacher education, and I walked into the design council and I said, could I speak to somebody, please? I've got ideas about design and education and how it can work differently, and I just think there might be someone here who might want to listen. And I guess this is one of the things that being a student gives you, is just the bravado to think it's fine to just walk in a place. I can't imagine doing it now, but it made complete sense at the time.
I'm
But I walked
strongly
in and I went,
encouraging my daughter to do it.
yeah, yeah.
She's not
And when
taking
you're a
my
student,
advice yet,
exactly.
but
And when you're a student, people want to help you. They might think it's a little bit cheeky, but actually, I don't mind at all. Take a seat, and that's exactly what happened. And um, they said, "Well, what's your name?" And let me see if there's someone here. And so I sat down, and they went and found somebody called Hilary Cottam, who you may have come across. She won Designer of the Year previously, but she's not a designer at all. She innovates around public services. She's an amazing author, and for orchestrator of projects and facilitator, she's brilliant. And she ended up inviting me and Martin in to support them on some education projects. So they commissioned us to do some research around teacher training. That went really well. So they said, well, we're just about to start a project with a company. I don't know if you've heard of them, they said, but it's IDEO. And there's an author called Charlie Leadbeater, and an organization called Demos. Do you want to join them, and we'll form a bit of a coalition and run an 18-month project on innovation and design in education? And we're like, yep, let's do that. So
Yeah.
we joined that project, and we were right in there with the world of post-it notes and with Colin Burns, who ran IDEO at the time. And we're like, how did we get here? But it was like, we have views on this stuff. We have the abilities to observe and assimilate and innovate. So we are valid in this little community here, and we can contribute. So that was our first piece of work, actually, as Mike and Martin, because we weren't quite Bond and Coyne. We weren't grown up enough to be Bond and Coyne. We were Mike and Martin at the time. So that was our first professional job, if you like.
And it's back to this education in general, and social justice, and
Yeah.
absence of opportunity, isn't it? And we talk a lot about the the generational shift now from boomers to Gen Z, and I, being 58 years old, I kind of, it wasn't, when you were sort of walking around, the opportunities, you were tripping over them all the time. It's like you weren't, in this melee of process, being intermediated by a sausage machine. That, the idea of walking into the design council, I mean, cheekiness aside, and then just getting hooked up with Idio and who else, Charlie Ledbetter, and it
Demos.
just, you
Demos.
could,
Demos.
yeah, and Demos, think tank,
Demos.
these,
I know, it's
and
amazing.
of course it's not, there is something about the sort of movement societally, but also the what would happen if we allowed the 1.5 billion people in the world who exist outside the labour market. They're not anywhere near that. I give you money, you give me time, to actually create
Yeah,
and innovate.
I know. Yeah,
It's there, in all of us, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So what I find fascinating is, what was it on my journey that led me to believe that it's not that I had the right, it was a valid thing for me to do.
Yeah.
Go,
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know quite what I want. I don't know quite who I am. I don't quite know what you're doing, but I just have this feeling that something's gonna match and something can happen. In my teaching that I do, this is what I try to encapsulate the whole time, is that you are to some degree in charge of your destiny, and people out there, they want to hear from you. They've been out there for a while. They're
Absolutely
probably
do.
frustrated. They're possibly running out of energy. They have to spend lots of money on recruitment. They don't know where to look. And there you are, knocking on the door, fresh, full of energy, ideas, with something to offer. Of course they're going to let you in. Of course they're going to let you in. Well, not everyone will let you in, but somebody's going to let you in and have a conversation. So,
Yeah.
like,
One of our this just similar story inspiration is led by a woman called Maggie Philbin, who used to present Tomorrow's World, which is
well,
tech. And
yeah,
I've confessed I'm a tech, I'm a geek, and it was watching that program that I could imagine, tech, and what, and it was like tech for good. It was like, and I've been fortunate enough to be to be connected with Maggie, and she's doing a social value project with us,
great.
and I needed to tell her that, thank you. You were you were that clay workshop in my history when
Yes.
I was
Yeah,
I was 10 or 12 or whatever it was.
yeah. It's important, isn't it?
Mm.
So does that
Hairs on the back of
nicely
my neck, it's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
so does that nicely segue into what is it jumping too far to talk about WonderWhat? I mean, I just feel that that's sort of an inspiring thing, helping very quite young people. I can't agree more with getting sort of inspiration earlier to young people, because we're
Yeah.
stuck in a system which is just very short from an
Yes.
educational perspective, and so you have to decide,
Yeah. And
which is unfit for purpose, really. But that's what we're with. So
yeah. And it's impossible, isn't it, to start talking about education without starting to list all the other things that are wrong with it. And you can't fix everything. And this is, any intervention you make is on the understanding there are other things that you're just going to have to live with for now. But I think there's probably one other chapter, if it's okay to mention,
yeah,
that led to WonderWhat, which is when we had our final show at the RCA. So we'd had the conversation with the design council that was starting. The course director of graphic design from Kingston University came around the shows and said to me and Martin, "Do you want to come and set a project for our students on the graphic design course?" We went, "I don't know if we can do that, but it'll be a bit of cash. It's useful. Cash is useful right now. We're right at the start. Let's do it." We did it, and my goodness, did my heart open. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to deliver education. I already had beliefs about education, but this is what it's like to actually deliver. So I never left. We both lectured there for a few years, and I lectured there for something like 16 years. So whilst we were building our business, we were also in different places, me particularly in Kingston. We were lecturing, and what we realized was the way that we lectured, delivered education, was very similar to the way that we ran our business, which was about democracy. Ideas can come from anyone. and that if you needed something to fix a problem and that thing didn't exist, then you invented it. And it's very nurturing, and we develop people, and that's just how we ran it. And we're still running the business. This is now our 20th year. So there's obviously something in that really works. But I suppose what was happening on the side was we were seeing the impact of the education we were delivering generally at final year degree level. These amazing young people going out to the world, brimming with creative confidence, able to plow their paths, take charge of their destiny, do amazing work, either make loads of money, change the world, or a little bit of both. They were taking charge. And I was just, particularly for me, I was saying this is about creative confidence. And you rewind back to school and it's about drawing and painting and you should be a doctor. And I'm like, it's just so much more than that. And people just don't realize. It's not their fault they don't realize. It's just they're not in this world to see it. So I guess, so over that 20 years...
Before, onto that final story. So in the pandemic, we over a 2-year period, recruited 65 sort of out of work people, many of whom were arts graduates. And it's quite a heartbreaking story, really, listening to your story, because the difference between your story and your story flipped over is a heartbeat of absence of opportunity. And the opposite of what you say, which is absolutely no confidence in the creativity or the design or the ability to manifest, needed such recuperation, that if, so many people are losing it, that from the point of education now, secondary, tertiary, even postgraduate, and actually coming out and going, well, I've no idea, I've no confidence, I don't, I can't apply. And it's quite heartbreaking, because I think it's a moment. I just, I think you could lose it in a heartbeat if you're not careful.
I know. I have witnessed that as well. There's a lot of work to do. I think whilst I was teaching at Kingston, and I was that kind of very privileged point in their educational career, was basically just doing that. Out you go, do amazing things. There's a hell of a lot of work that goes into a young person getting to that point where they've got their self-awareness, they've got a sense of their purpose, their ability, they have a desire to make people listen, etc., etc. There's so much that goes into that person feeling empowered and able to capitalize on their creativity. You can't just swoop in the end and say, look what creativity can do, because it's about the person so much more than it is the creativity on its own, of course. So I've seen this. I've seen two things: the kind of the slight crumbling in confidence, and clearly the world is different as well. Particularly through that period of time, and we're still recovering, and now we're dealing, aren't we, with the advent of AI and everything else, which is a great thing, but is just unsettling. Like, what does it all mean? So
sorry, I'm making this very hard for you.
No, you're not. It's just there's so many things to talk about.
Yeah, there is. Well, there are.
So I think, so you said about WonderWhat. So I guess over the 20 years of building up the business, we've learned a lot about design and digital expertise. We built an amazing team that can build things. We also have a great awareness, I think, of what we can actually make real. And at the same time, we're seeing the number of young people taking GCSE creative subjects going down and down and down. So it's the lowest it's ever been. And yet we see the impact that creative education has. So we're like, okay, put all of that together. We see lots of coalitions out there, people with the same kind of beliefs that we have, connected to government, not connected to government, all saying the right thing and agreeing on the right thing, but there aren't that many practical interventions out there. Not really. And we're like, okay, we're in a position where we can make a practical intervention. We don't have a coalition, but let's build it and see. So we built WonderWhat, which is a it's designed for 13 years and over, so 13 to 18, but really it can be any age. But we made sure we designed it for 13, the digital intuitions of 13 and 14-year-olds, because that's the point in their school career where they choose whether or not to hold on to creative subjects at school. So like, this is the point where we can come in and potentially actually make a difference. But what do we need? We need to build something that has got no gates, there are no barriers, there's no sign in, no download, no data harvesting, nothing. So it's anyone can access it, and it should be able to work without any adult involvement at all. Equally, wouldn't it be great if we built it and it could be used in a classroom? But actually, that's secondary. It's like this should go into the hands of young people and away they go. And there's something about teenagers at that age, they fall in and out of love with everything all the time. They love it, they hate it, they love it, they hate it, they're scrolling, they're liking, let's just go with that and not build anything that needs any prior knowledge at all. So we built it to work a bit like how Instagram works. It's a continuous scroll of thousands of images of creative work done by students. There's no labels, no captions, it's just, here you go. Start to like stuff that you're kind of drawn to. And once you've liked enough of them, it says, because you've liked those, you might be interested in these routes in the creative fields. You might not, but take a look. But before I explain the next bit, there's 3 ways in. There's the image bit that I've just described. There's also, if you know what you want to do, architecture, illustration, theatre, whatever, click, 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 then you can go on and explore. Or you can chat to a chat GPT bot that we train to have a conversation with you about creative careers. So it's not all about images, there are other ways in. But once you've gone through and it's that you've given you 3 possible routes, straight away, each of those disciplines breaks down into all the kinds of jobs that you can have within that discipline. So say 18 job types under graphic design. And each of those you can click and see live jobs available across the UK right now. You can click by region, you see the salary. So you can go downstairs and say to your mum or your dad that messing around that I do on my computer upstairs, it's got a name, it's graphic design. Not only has it got a name, I can get a job with that title. Not only is it a job, look at the salary I can learn. And actually, there are jobs down the road. So this conversation about me being a solicitor or not, and not being able to get a job in graphic design, here's proof that there are jobs available. Now, we know a 13-year-old doesn't need to apply for a job, but they need to have that argument ready for people in their household potentially who don't either understand or believe in the creative fields like we do, perhaps. So it's got that kind of information, aspirational stuff like award-winning work, blogs you should follow, and we've got films of students talking about their experiences, finding themselves for the first time being surrounded by illustrators. This is what it's like to come to a uni or go to a college and be surrounded by people like you, immersed in drawing like this. Here's my studio, look at my sketchbook. And then finally, we've got professionals in these fields, working at places like the V&A, the Old Vic, on camera, busting myths about their sector. So what we did was we went to 13-year-olds and said, we're going to go to a museum and a theatre. What do you want to know? Okay, our museum's just full of old things. Do you earn money if you work in a theatre? I'm a person of colour. Do I have a place in the world of theatre? I do. Am I going to be welcome? And so there's kind of myth busting and there's throwing the gauntlet down. So if you're in the film industry and you want to see more female film directors, we're getting those professionals to say it on camera, and that's on WonderWhat too. And finally, actually, we've built in a mental health support platform called Tell Me, which is peer-to-peer support, because we know it can be really, really hard to broach a subject with your family. If they want you to be a doctor and you want to be an illustrator, that's a real big climb. Speak to other young people who've gone through that process or who are going through that process themselves. So we've plugged in this sort of mental health support to help young people prepare themselves to make these decisions as well.
So where next? Where now? How do people get involved? What?
Yeah, but where are you on the journey with that? You know.
Yeah. So we only launched it. I mean, we kind of did a pilot in partnership with the Arts University Bournemouth a year or so ago, um, but we only officially launched this in October. And what's been fascinating is we now have a coalition forming around us. So we do have the likes of the Old Vic, V&A Dundee. We've got DNAD, who are now a partner. They've agreed to open up their archive for us to populate parts of WonderWhat. We've been talking with government departments about how we might help them to do what they're doing. We've spoken with, and I can't use their names, but record labels and games companies. They're like, okay, because this is a concerted joint effort to make sure we have the pipeline of talent in our industry, and that talent is as diverse as it could be. So this is not just down to one person. This is concerted effort from across the creative disciplines, and people want to help. So we are building up our partnerships. And interestingly, we're also talking to different countries around the world who need a WonderWhat there too, but possibly for slightly different reasons. And what we're finding is that it's getting interest from so many different places, but we're looking for, I guess, cultural partners to help us create those films about myth busting. We're looking for education partners who will give us access to students to create films. We're looking for creative students so we can take their work to put on as the inspiration. And we're looking for partners to help us actually get this into the hands of young people and into the classroom as well. And we're building teacher portal functionality as well, so it can actually be used as a lesson, the basis of a lesson too. So there's lots going on. There's a lot of good feeling around it, but everything up to this point has been completely 100% self-initiated and self-funded. A little bit like one of your stories a little while ago. It's like this is all us. So we're just hoping that there will be people that get on board that can help us to scale it and get it into the hands of young people.
Yeah, we came across still no. There's a network called Arts and Culture Network, and it's run by a guy called Mark Walmsley, and I think
Mhm.
it's like 5,000 people. It was a LinkedIn group, and Mark's lovely guy, and it strikes me that there's probably less coherence in that work context of arts and culture than there is if you were an accountant, let's say, not picking on any industry in
Yeah,
particular, but it's how do you create that coherence, and sort of sense making for people of a younger age, earlier on, who who just aren't going to be a doctor or an accountant, which seems to be the real work that is
yes,
promoted. Um,
I mean, I
and
know
I use
STEM
that.
gets a lot of support, STEM, promoting STEM, and the arts has, creativity been somewhat ignored, forgotten. Um, but we work with a small charity which is about um, inspiring primary school children, so younger than your, and I think their main thing is they're not the only thing, but the main thing is about space and going into the space industry, and what can young people, particularly in disadvantaged areas, how can they even hope, to be an astrophysicist, have gone to university and done astrophysics or whatever it is, but understanding that actually, there's many roads to that end of being in space. It
yes,
doesn't mean you have to go to Durham and do astrophysics. It means you could be, one of the guys that runs it. It did not follow, what we'd call the normal route of education, but he's an incredible engineer, and he's, does hadron colliders, and is phenomenally interesting, but found his route very differently. And I think sort of, we need to help people that understand that's okay, don't we? It's like
yeah,
how you get there is you do not, there is nothing, right or wrong about the traditional. It just is what it is. But you can get there in other ways. What moves you?
exactly.
Why are you doing that? What do you want to do? How do you want to get there? What do you need to do?
Yes,
And it's not all about traditional education, I don't think, particularly
no,
creativity. reality.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, and I think so. We like on WonderWhat, we've made sure that we built in educational pathways so people can see more traditional routes, also less traditional routes. There's apprenticeship routes in there, and also like supplementary alternative routes as well, like the National Saturday Club, which because of my own journey, which wasn't a National Saturday Club, but pretty much was a similar kind of setup. Um, really, really valuable option for young people just to start that journey, even if they can't take art at school. So it is really important, isn't it, that it might be a less traditional career in your mind, but there are less traditional educational and career routes to get there as well, and it's all okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'd completely forgotten, but you reminded me when you talked about your mother and doing adult education. My mother used to do creative writing as an adult education, because it was
Mm.
something she enjoyed and did, and I'd forgotten about that. But just that whole, I mean, yes, we want to help young people, but actually, education is a lifelong thing, or should be, and how you want to move and where you want to go next, and how you want to, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who've missed out on the creative opportunities that there are, that sit there and are
Completely.
quite miserable with what they've ended up
I
doing.
mean, yeah,
Uh,
I mean, how often do you hear it when people say, I gave up my job and went back to painting, or I'm looking forward to retiring so I can
yeah,
finally do my poetry or whatever it is. And it's like, why are you leaving it till much later in life to embrace that? And I tell you, there's one other thing happened fairly recently. I was a judge on a design award for young people, and it was for sort of 11, 12 to 15-year-old, I think it was. And it was a new award. It was connected with Daydream Believers, which is run by amazing Helena Good. You probably should speak with her at some point, and D&AD. And it was our job as a range of creative professionals to feedback and decide these winners of these sort of junior design award. And the the experience I had was quite incredible, actually, because what you found yourself doing was you were feeding back to these young people who were just finding their feet. And I'm like, you're kind of including encouraging words in your feedback, and then all of a sudden you realize you are talking to your 13-year-old self. And I was just bowled over in an instant. That's a classic, isn't it? What would you tell yourself? And I was, I had to go upstairs, had to cry a bit, come back down and keep going. Like, it was just blew me away. And there is something about making these black and white routes available, like understanding of salaries, but it's also our job to go, it's okay. You're nervous at the moment, you're not confident at the moment, but your time will come. And if it's not too self-indulgent, after judging that award, I wrote some words down about that feeling that I had and kind of what I would want to say to these young people. Can I read that
yeah,
out?
that's a brilliant, brilliant. I'm conscious of the time, so what a brilliant end. Do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Okay. Um, okay. So to the misfits, the shouldn't fits, and the won't fits, to the quiet ones in the corner, the introverts and the don't quite say it right, the ones with ideas worth shouting about, but not yet the voice to do it, the fidgeters, doodlers, and dreamers. This This right here is your power. The power to know how people should feel and what they need to understand. But it's not confidence, not yet. This is empathy brewing within you. It's also creativity, imagination, and the power to see things differently. It is the desire to make different happen or better happen, the beautiful and the I can't quite believe it happen. You have the power to generate wonder in others. Remember that. Now write, draw, design, create, for one day it will make you fly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm gonna we will listen back to that again and again and again and again. Thank you so much, Mike, for spending almost an hour with us. Rob, do you have anything else you want to say, ask
No,
before
no,
we
I think
say
it's been an amazing. I mean, we didn't know Mike before this
no?
podcast, and now we've just covered so much ground I just we know each other really quite well. It's been a real honour, Mike, to spend some time with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's not very often you get to talk, I guess, through your story, and it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, till the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.